All right, everybody, welcome back. We got another interview coming up on the Identity Jedi Show. Appreciate you guys all tuning in. We're going to get straight to it. The gentleman coming on, we haven't known each other very long, but it seems like we've known each other for a while. It's one of those, let me break this down. It's one of those things, you just meet people and immediately you just get along. That's me and Jim. And it's funny because I can't remember, and I'm going to ask him when we get into this, because I can't remember who connected us. But it was funny because they said the exact same thing. It was like, you've got to meet Jim, because I know once you meet him, like you two are like, you guys are like peas in a pod. And I was like, okay. Because I've heard a lot of people say that and I'm like, all right, whatever. And I meet people and it's like, all right, cool. But this was just, I was like, Jim, where have you been all my life? So Jim, welcome to the pod.
Thank you.
This has been a long time coming. We had to get some schedules together, but totally glad to have you on, man. Looking forward to just having a conversation and chatting. And before we get started, just give quick, brief intro, quick background, let everybody know about who you are, and then we'll hop into some good topics that we got today.
Sure. So when people ask how long I've been doing this, I usually joke and say too long. Spent 12 and a half years at a company called Delphi Automotive Systems. Back in 2000, build out Active Directory, Exchange. I owned it for 80,000 people worldwide. I had hair before then. They outsourced to everybody in the world and found out I lost my job. Went into consulting for about 14 years. Ended up with a company called CDW. Ended up doing mergers and acquisitions the last 4. And that when it was time to exit. And years at Microsoft in the security identity practice.
Nice, man. All right. So you, quite like myself, I've just seen a lot in the world of identity, right? Especially coming around like, Active Directory, just the shenanigans that people do with Active Directory. I always joke with people like Active Directory is the best and the worst thing we ever did in the world of identity, because we gave people this tool, the Swiss Army knife of a thing, and said, yeah, what's it for? Authentication and access and networking and just kind of everything. And that's kind of what they did with it. And I've seen some things that people have done with Active Directory that can't be unseen. And
so let me ask you.
Yeah.
And I can't tell the company, but what do you think the largest Active Directory debt is for Microsoft, size-wise?
I'm
going to help you.
Okay.
It's 500 gig. It's 17 million user objects.
Jesus. That is, wow.
Yep. And if we get some tequila after this, we can talk more. But yeah, it was one of my customers, very interesting. And yeah, they couldn't do a DC promo because the replication. Yeah, they had to copy the DID over, and they just couldn't. Yeah, it was like, no, you're kidding, but no, they weren't kidding.
Jesus. Yeah.
When you said doing things, because you can.
Exactly. Because you can. That is literally the classic AD administrator answer. Like, what? So why do you do it this way? Because I can. You could, right? Like, okay. There was nothing stopping you from doing it. So it's like, all right, yeah. And that, folks, is what we have been trying to unravel in the world of identity for the past 30 years. Right? It's the reason. I think it's one of the reasons and the crux for why I think this is so. Why a lot of it is so complicated, and why it is so. It delves so much into the business and it touches so much, is because it's kind of central and core to what everything touches, right? And also why a lot of people, they will state the fact that, hey, it all starts with AD, and people kind of tie in identity to like Active Directory or user email accounts, and it gets tied to IT and all these things or whatever, is because that's the big thing that people kind of tie to. But it starts from there, right? That's where most users are most affected But it's because of that, because you can tie kind of everything in around that main account, and it just all kind of trickles, from there. Your email accounts, and then you use you use those groups, and use active groups. You can use those groups to then take those groups and federate and authenticate into different applications. And so you use those same security groups, and you use those for authorization into other accounts, and yada yada yada, and on and on and on and on. Right. And so it all kind of centers from there. So like one bad decision that you decide to make in AD because you can ends up being a bad decision that you end up making in, XYZ application, 4 and 5 things removed from AD that you don't even know. And that's kind of how you wind up in these
what
messes.
We call it after that? Legacy technical debt.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you throw in SSO, and then you start throwing in because we've proliferated Active Directory when we moved to Entra.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So they're two different objects, same attributes, but most people don't understand they're two different objects. Same attributes look the same, but they're not.
Right.
And that's why when people move Exchange on-prem to the cloud, there were things that didn't work, and they're like, well, why doesn't it work? Because they're two different attributes.
Right.
But then you get technical debt, and trying to dig your way out of that years or decades of technical debt is where most customers are today in the identity journey.
Yeah. And then, you get these, piss a little bit of people off, but you get these vendors and these salespeople that come in and go, oh, well, here's this product, and you just flip a switch and it all works. Right. And it doesn't. And the reason is because it's, you have to have a plan. Right. You have to know like what it is that you're going to, like, technology is only going to get you so far. And most of these people don't have a plan. And it's so funny, like the recipe for disaster. I'm going to use this and set this up to like what I want to get to, right? This MIT report that was floating around for a while. The recipe for disaster, right? Stop me if you heard this one, folks, right? So you go into an organization, it's like, oh yeah, like, well, the previous team is all gone, right? So they bought a solution, but that team is gone. So now there's a solution in there. So not only is the administrative team is gone, the leadership is gone, right? And so now brand new team, brand new leadership, and now there's a new executive in place. So they've got this previous, I'll just say, administration's, all their decisions, and nobody has any connection to anything that's there. So what's the first thing they want to do? They're just going to go, I'm going to get rid of everything, right? Because, I don't want to, use all the stuff that they had. I'm just going to bring in all new stuff. But also they have no connection to what the actual problems are. They don't understand, like, what are the things that we're trying to solve and connect with the business. We don't understand, like, what are the things we're trying to do. So we're just going to bring in like whatever new tool that we can solve. That sounds great, right? And the one that's the real kicker is somebody who comes in and goes, well, I'm just going to bring in my ace project manager, or this person who, they're always the guy or the girl that I give the hard projects to. So they give them that. They know nothing about identity, which I'm not saying you have to be an identity expert to come into identity. That's not the case. But like, if you're coming into it and you've never had an identity project before, so you don't know the questions to ask, you don't know the areas to go, right? Like, I come into that project, I'm like, yeah, this is going to be an absolute shit show. Like, I already know, we were talking about earlier, like, I know the brick wall you're getting ready to run into. Yep. Like, you are like sprinting right towards it. Like, please listen. Please.
The other one that I always ask when I was consulting is, they would go, we want to implement this security thing. And I went, okay, well, where's your security document, right? Your security policy. Oh, well, we don't have it. I said, well, then how am I going to implement? How do I know I've implemented this security thing correctly to your, if I want to build a house, I want a 3-bedroom house. I go to a contractor, he's going to build me a 3-bedroom house. But people neglect what their security policy says so that somebody can implement it and know that they've implemented it correctly. And that's one of the things I see a lot of customers fail on. And I mean, your single-digit percentiles of customers that really have one that's any good.
Yeah. It's, you end up getting the never-ending project problem, right? So somebody comes in and goes, when are we done? Why am I still investing? Now your identity leader is coming back asking for another $3 million. Like, why are we still investing in identity? Didn't we fix this last year, right? Because you don't know when you're done,
You don't
right?
have a target.
You don't have a target.
And did anybody talk to the business before they implemented their identity solution?
Right. Yeah.
Usually no.
Right. So it was this MIT report that started floating around. It was like a couple of weeks ago. Like I saw somebody posted on LinkedIn, and people started talking about it, and typical stuff we see on LinkedIn, right? Somebody gets an MIT report, and then the startups start getting it. Oh, here it is, and here's why we are going to fix all. I'm like, I love when I see that. But it was interesting because it was like, the tagline was 95% of AI projects are failing in enterprises, and I was just like, oh, that's interesting. And the full reports, I'm reading this off of Fortune. I'll post the link in the description notes for those watching and listening if you guys want to go read this. And I believe they link to the actual full MIT report for the real nerds who actually want to go read the real research, which nobody does anymore, except nerds like me. I haven't actually read the real report, but I will later this weekend. But basically what it breaks down to is that, so despite the rush to integrate, so I'm quoting here, about 5% of AI pilot programs achieve rapid revenue acceleration. The vast majority stall, delivering little to no measurable impact on P&L. The research, based on 150 interviews with leaders, 300 survey of 350 employees, analysis of 300 public AI deployments, paints a clear divide between success stories and stalled projects. Oh my God. So here's the success criteria, right? Here's the reason why the ones that are successful. It's because they pick one pain point, execute well, and partner smartly with companies who use their tools. But for 95% of companies in the data set, generative AI implementation is falling short. The core issue, not the quality of the AI models, not the learning gap for both tools and organizations. Executives often blame regulation or model performance, yada, yada, yada. But what it comes down to is they don't have clear goals, no clear goals, no actual execution of what they're solving. And so then they go and then some blame like the tools didn't meet the requirements, which they didn't clearly articulate. So I read through this and I look at this and I was like, this sounds so familiar. This was identity projects back when they started. People rushed, bought a tool, right? 90% of them were failing, and everybody was asking why. This is because nobody was asking the questions of what we were just talking about, like, what does done look like? Did we talk to the business? We're going to go provision. We're going to go create roles, right? Everybody wants to go do a role project. Why? To do what? For what reason?
Because it's more secure, right?
Exactly. So I look at this and, you were saying it earlier, like before we started, like you feel like everybody is like so over their skis with AI, right? Like as you look at kind of where we are and where you're going, like what are your, like, I guess what's your overall thoughts on like how AI like should be used and where you think it's going right now?
Personally, I think the AI boom is going to be like the .NET boom. And that we're going to see there's a lot of venture capital, there's a lot of startups, and I think a lot of them are going to go belly up. I think AI conceptually is going to be very powerful, and we're seeing some places it is. I think what they're doing in healthcare, where, I was reading a study where they took like 350 doctors and they showed them cases. The doctors then looked through the case and then they ran it through AI. AI was like 85% accurate and the doctors were 20-something. I think those cases where you can quantify, right? So you have real valid data that we can pull from, I think we're going to be successful. I think some of the other areas right now, I made the comment they're out beyond their skids, is they're promising things that their butt can't deliver, right? And, I've heard people explain, well, we could do this and we could do that. But when you look at the people that are creating the LLMs and what it takes to accomplish that, I think in some of those we might be 2, 3, 4, 5 years out. And then I think it becomes more realistic, but we should crawl, walk, run, but we went from, hey, new shiny toy, let's run. We're going to skip the crawl and the walk phase. And I think a lot of companies have just jumped in feet first and are running. They don't have a target. They don't have a use case that they can focus and say, let's see how it works.
Yeah. What scares me the most is that fundamentally, right, AI is built on data. All this is just, ML algorithms
Good or
and
bad, right?
exactly, right? And that is, the one thing, especially in enterprises, that we have just never wanted to do is solve data problems. Human beings in
Because it's
general
hard.
yeah, exactly. It's hard.
It's
And
hard.
human beings in general just suck at looking at mass amounts of data. It's just not something we want to do. And I this rush to, trust and throw these AI interfaces on top of just massive amounts of extremely shitty data that has not been cleansed or any way, quantified is just shocking to me. And then you're wondering why, like, the results that you're getting like aren't working, or and I'm just like nothing magical happened, guys. Like the same shitty data that you've been complaining about for decades. You threw an LLM on top of it and you thought magically it got better? Like
So here's
it's still
one.
the same data. Like, what do you
One thing that we saw, and customers would complain about Copilot and revealing information that it shouldn't. Well, no, it had access to information that it shouldn't. So when you did a query to find things, if it had access to SharePoint that you didn't know where the SharePoint site was, you wouldn't have stumbled upon it, okay? So the problem wasn't with the AI. The problem was there's no data classification and ACLs, access control lists for people that aren't that old,
right?
that stopped you from seeing it. So it exposed a problem that was inherently already there.
Exactly.
And the customers blamed it on AI.
And exactly, right. And it's so I love this example, right? So let's keep pulling on this thread because I love this, right? So
it's a long string. Yeah.
it's a very long string, right? So you look at this and this is SharePoint, this is Google Drive, this is any of these, right? Any of these models where you have like these sharing aspects and you create these, permissions on the datas and the folders and shared across organizations. Because in the midst of collaboration, what we did was, okay, so you and I are working on a document together. And so we wanted to, make it super fast and easy for the users to share documents. So I share a document with you, cool. And then we drop it in a folder, we're sharing, great. Quick Tiger Teams type action, boom. Then we're done. We move on to the next thing. I don't go back and update those permissions. I don't go back and change it. No, we move on to the next thing, right? So now, we do that over the course of a year. Maybe me and you work on 20 projects together, right? We've created, we'll keep it really simple math for people. So 20 projects, and in those 20 projects, we've created 100 documents over the course of a year. So now we throw an AI on there and we say, okay, we're connected to Google Drive and find all these things, right? So to that example, so we go in and it's like, oh, well, it found all these documents. Like, oh my God, it shouldn't have found those documents. When it went to go answer this question, it brought it from this project and this project. It's hallucinating. No, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's connecting to the information that you gave it. Why? Because you gave it full admin access to the entire share drive, right? And so now it's this I came from, my security background started from the government, right? So my first corporate job, my interest into the workforce was the federal government and the intelligence community. So all I knew from security was need to know from the jump, meaning that we could be colleagues and work together, but you could have different access levels than I could. So everything was always need to know and compartmentalize. So I was used to coming out the gate that like everything was separate and everything needed to be approved. And the fact that like when you combined two different pieces of data, that it could then turn into a different level of classification, right? So
Right.
there was always this concept in my head from the time I started working that every piece of data has its own classification and combinations of that become something else. So now, right, when you add in something like AI, which can sit across, and it's not really AI, but you're opening up the connection of data, right, finally, and saying, all right, now I can connect to this data. So what I've given is a tool that has complete admin access to everything, and I've broken across these very shallow permission walls that you've created, which you just didn't have complete visibility into. So this was always a mess. You just couldn't see
Right.
it. But now I've given something complete visibility into it, and now I've presented it back to you. I've finally given you the mirror to this very ugly, shitty piece of crap data that you've always had, but I've given you this big, huge mirror. Now you can see it, and you don't like it. So you're going to blame the thing that you put in front of it. It's like, no, 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 no. This was always there. But now I just made it really easy for you to see, and it's natural language searchable. So you can see how bad it is. And it's like, here you go. Here's your
Yeah.
side.
Or the company had petabytes of data in a file servers that they didn't want to delete because they didn't know how old it was. There's no lifecycle management. So now all of that historical data can be accessible as well. And who knows what buried bodies are in those places.
Right.
And it just exposed it. I saw customers that would enable Copilot and disable it because there were too many skeletons in the closet and they had to go back and clean it up.
Yeah.
And that was part of the mantra, is do data classification cleanup first before you enable any AI. But that wasn't cool because we wanted the shiny toy and we wanted to show people that we're AI enabled, or whatever we want to call it.
Right.
And then the CEO's salary or something, ends up in public.
If anything, I thought that we would see, and maybe we still will. Like, I thought this would bring back, the data classifications. I think data security, posture management, I think will come back and kind of be a buzz. Like, maybe this will make some of the data classification tools maybe a little bit easier, because it's going to have to bring back that focus on data. And I could probably see enterprise search maybe kind of coming back again, right? To be able to look across this and truly start to get in there and help manage it. Because I think one thing, technology is always full of these pivots, like these byproducts, right? Like Slack was a byproduct of, I can't remember what it is they were building, and they accidentally created Slack. And maybe with this, right, with some of these AI tools, it's like, hey, a byproduct is we accidentally created a nice enterprise data classification tool, right? By trying to give you access to everything. Like, well, we can search and find everything and make it searchable to be able to find, like, here's all this data and here's how this maps, right? But also, interestingly enough, is to be able to see, because like with some of these tools, the thing about it is, like, with some of these LLMs, when you connect to it, right, not only does it connect and find the data, but it'll give you the sources, right? So with that, it knows, like, here's why I reference these things and I use these as sources, which to me, like, is really powerful and important, because what that tells you is it gives you some kind of relationship and graph of a connection of the data points. You ask me this, I gave you this answer, and I'm pointing to this sources of data as reasons for why I made this connection, right? So that means at some point I found some kind of connection to these data points of why it's relevant to this material that I'm giving back to you, right? And I think that, it could be helpful in going to the fact that, hey, let's do something to help to better clean up this data, right? Because most of the time when it comes to these data cleanups and stuff like that, it's, again, like, it's, you go back and ask the new people, like, hey, what is this data, right? I don't know, right? It was Bob's, and Bob retired 10 years ago, and
nobody wants to clean it up because it could be a career-altering decision.
Exactly.
The other thing is we may see more siloing of that data, right?
Yes.
If they can't classify it or clean it up, they silo it off outside of where the AI tools can reach, which to me makes a lot more sense if you configured it that way in the first place. Crawl, walk, run.
Right.
We wanted to search these, whatever, website, SharePoint, Teams, start there, and then expand as you understood. But they unleashed Pandora's box in a lot of companies that had no clue what they were going to find until they found things that they didn't want to find.
Right.
And then the SLT screamed, you know. But I think we've just, at least at IT, like you're talking, I think we've lost the vision of let's start with that one use case and
Yeah.
learn and do it right. And then do 2 and 3 and 4 so that we as humans can learn. And LLMs aren't smart. They only make rational decisions based on the data we feed them.
Right.
And if I don't trust everything that I use, pick your favorite AI tool. I've had it tell me really cool PowerShell commandlets, and I thought, wow, I didn't know that existed. And as I dug more, it made it up. But it could have found a module somebody put out on the internet that was going to build it that never did. So it may not necessarily have made it up, but it grabbed bad data.
Right.
So, and we have to delineate as humans what's truth and what isn't.
Yeah, and I think it's along the way. I think what we got lost in the we got lost in the magic of all of this, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's, to your point, I think it's our job to remember to ground the rest of the world in the reality. I always use this analogy that to the rest of the world, this is magic. But we
Yeah.
know, like, we're the magicians on stage that understand that it's not magic. It's all sleight of hand. It's all zeros and ones to us because we know what this stuff really is. And I think too many, I think too many magicians got caught in the magic ourselves, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I get
In
it,
the
right?
hype.
It's fascinating. It's cool. I'm a nerd in technologies and excited about the possibilities just like anybody else. But at the same time, I've always I want it to be the rightful helper that it can be. But to me, I've always been grounded in like the data aspect of it, what it can actually do when we're using it the right way. And I just look at some of these things like I've used it a lot for developing apps. I'll put it like this: it has brought the joy for me back in coding. For a while, I got away from coding because it was so laborious, such
Mhm.
a monstrous task. And so, yeah, like it's made some of the stuff easier, like handling most of that stuff. But then I look at the code that it generates, and I'm like, okay, I get it, but I know what I'm looking at, right? And I'm
Right.
like, okay, like,
That's the key
cool,
difference.
exactly,
In,
right?
in
Like,
all of the software developers that are going to be replaced, you're not replacing the senior people because they know how to code and they know how to read the bullshit that it created. But the junior developers are going to take that and go, wow, this is great, and move on with it. And you don't know what bugs that it's building in it.
right. And that's the part that is that's the part that does concern me, right? Like I think there's too much of an excitement around the movement of they're jumping to these productivity numbers and we can replace this, and I'm just like,
Yeah. But
you're right, exactly. Can you?
Can you? How
You
about
know,
you start and then you measure, you start and measure. You don't cut the leg off and then measure.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and but in some ways it's the cycle we see with technology, right? We always tend to over rotate. Something comes out and you know we jump all over it. It's this, that, or whatever, and then we swing back the other way. And so, however this works out, I know this is going to be disruptive, right? I mean, we're seeing it now. I think
Last 6 months.
yeah, I think it will definitely change. It will change how we look at things. It's clearly going to change software development. I hope for the better. It may be for the worse for a period of time, but I think it will hopefully better. I like where AWS has taken it with Kiro, the ability to build specs and design specifications and then testing against specifications and kind of, so we're learning as we're going, but I think that the pace of what it's going is we're probably going to cause a little bit more destruction faster than we are productivity in the near future, but we'll see. So outside of that, I mean, that there's the AI stuff. I want to get your take on just, so Paolo makes it to move to buy like, Cyborg. Okay, cool. Um, but I've been talking to a lot of people about, again, the cycles. Like we've seen this a couple of times in tech where we always see these cycles of like, building platforms, best of breed,
Mhm.
building platforms, best of breed. Like what's your thoughts on this, right? Because I hear a lot of like for the last couple of years, customers I've been hearing a lot of like CISOs say, single pane of glass. You vendors need to make it easier for me, yada yada yada. And I say yada because I was like, do CISOs say this crap all the time, right? You guys said that
Yeah.
15 years ago, and so then Oracle tried it, and Broadcom bought all these companies, and they didn't like that. So then people went best of breed. Like it's just a cycle, right? Like you say all this crap, they go do it, and then you don't like it. So I know it's going to cycle again. I guess it's just my time to be, I'm at that age. So now I'm just the old cynic. I'm like, yeah, whatever. You guys say this crap. And
Welcome
then,
to the club. Yeah.
right. But I'm just curious, like, your thoughts saying stuff like that. Like, is it, do you see the platform route coming again? Do you see best of breed? Like just in general, what are your
So
thoughts?
let me take it a different angle.
Okay.
How many companies do you know that through acquisitions went down the path of platform, but never fully integrated all the companies to accomplish a platform? Almost everyone,
Right.
Microsoft included, almost everyone.
Yeah.
So when you ask, what do I think? If a company actually took the time from end to end to integrate, I think they could be successful. Do I think we're going to see it? Probably not, because nobody does it. Because it
Right.
takes time, it takes different code bases, it takes different teams, it takes management vision of where you want to go. And this is, when I worked in consulting companies, you'd buy another consulting company, they never integrated. They just stayed siloed inside. I think, not because I work there, but I think Microsoft has one of the best chances to succeed because they've built the platform to work together rather
Right.
than buying and doing it. There's some things I think they do 80% very well, but the other 20% is where your value-added resellers, your VARs and stuff come in. I don't think there's a utopia where any company wins. I really don't, because
Yeah.
the CEO and the SLTs won't be at the company long enough because they'll be chasing other big comp plans. Look at what I did here so I can jump to get a bigger comp plan, to see that all materialize and mature. I don't see it. Call me a skeptic.
Yeah. No, I mean, valid points, right? And I don't, I've just from a risk perspective, and again, this is just how I came into my career, right? So I came in from in the intelligence community, dude, where it's like the one thing you want to do is de-risk everything as much as possible,
Yeah,
right? Like where truly is everything was compartmentalized, so you never put all your eggs in any basket.
yeah.
So if you're gonna ask me, like, am I gonna have one Uber vendor to solve everything? Absolutely not, because everything that screams at me is like, so you're telling me you're gonna give me one single point of failure? If I'm on the other side, I'm like, please do that. Thanks. I got one place to get to you, buddy. That's it. That's all
But
I
then
need.
how do you deal with a SOC that has 14 different tools,
Yeah.
and you've got a breach that it takes you 2 weeks to figure out you got breached? So
Yeah.
there's that
Yeah.
dichotomy of, it makes sense, but then the flip side is, that bad actor's been in your environment. The statistics, the last one I saw was, it's 72 minutes from the time they compromise a device until basically they've got domain admin in your environment.
Yeah.
72 minutes.
Yeah. I think so. I'm gonna. This is my technical conspiracy architect hat on.
Okay.
I think that
Put
not
my
really.
hood on or something so
No,
they can't see our faces. No.
that's all right.
Okay.
That's not really conspiracy theory, but like I think the path, and was it? I can't remember who was it. Who had DXL? Was it McAfee? I think it was McAfee that had like
Yeah.
they called it like their DXL layer, but I'm going to Google it real quick. DXL. I can't find it. Open DXL. I'll find it later. But basically, so to that point about the SOC, and you have all these different tools.
Mhm.
I've always thought like the key there is standards and a way to, you're going to need a common standard integration bus across. So either you take something like what's the, God dang it, I'm losing all of them. There's a company that makes, man, they make connections between applications. I can't remember what their name of, not Snowflake, but there's another one or whatever. But the ability to like pass messages back and forth
Mhm.
between systems, like that's going to be like the key, right? Because right now, most of these applications kind of take in and ingest information. So
Mhm.
I've always looked at it as it's just a giant ETL problem. So if I have a standard way to take in messages, like, so if you go back to like how we came up with SOAP and SOA, like
Mhm.
that architecture was always the key answer, is that if I can generally take in and consume information and send the messages across, no matter what application I'm talking to, I could take an alert from whatever system. I take the alert and consume it in one platform, no matter whatever it is. So let's just say Microsoft Defender, and I get an alert.
Mhm.
As soon as I consume an alert, I say I push it onto my bus and I send it across the bus, and every single application I have can consume it. So at that point, I'm getting information across my entire network within the SOC. So anybody that can take and consume it. Now, I may have to internally take in the messages, push into my systems. I may have to create another thin layer that sits on top of that to say I have to take all these messages and send it to all the applications to say what that means. But that allows me to go and see, here are the messages that are coming in. Here's my applications that are getting those messages. So that way I can see anything that's coming in across, right? So therefore I have integration across my applications. I don't need them all to directly integrate, but they can all get the same data and I can correlate that across, right? That's where I think, like, if I truly look at this, like, that's where I could see something like um, an AI powered dashboard to look at standardized messages and data across, because I can look at data standards and patterns across messages. Like, that's where something like that becomes really powerful. So if I can standardize all my messages coming across my SOC system, I can throw an element of that because I have standard
Mhm.
sanitized data. Now I can look for pattern recognition, and now I can do a natural language search across that. And so show me the patterns that I'm seeing. Now I've got something. Now I'm catching those things and I'm seeing those, and I'm reducing alert fatigue. I'm doing those things. So my SOC runs there. Now I'm doing my high level alert dashboarding off of this, that's seeing everything that's going across my SOC. So you guys operate in the tools that you're used to. My high level reporting and dashboarding I'm doing over here off of my base messages that I'm seeing across that.
But you're asking all the competitors to use a standard and agree on a standard. I don't see that happening.
True.
I agree with the concept, but you're asking the frenemies, right, to come up with a standard that everybody can agree on. Let's
Exactly.
talk about LDAP.
Yeah.
Simple
So
standard.
I feel like, yeah, I am asking the competitors to do it.
Mhm.
And or I just create, for the most part, I can fish the standard out of whatever they do. Because alerts are alerts. Like,
Minus normalization and stuff, yeah.
yeah, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like somebody could look at that and go, okay, I could either wait again, most of these competitors aren't going to do it. Like, standards are hard. Like, there's a
Yep.
whole lot of shit to go to do it. These competitors aren't going to work together because bias. Okay, cool. Can I come up with, like, can a complete unbiased third party go, I'll just create the integration layer in
Yeah.
here and just go, here's an open standard for an alert. It's going to put a little bit of onus on the actual customer, right? Which then kind of takes us away from a smaller shop. You're going to have to be a little bit bigger shop and have some expertise inside and go, listen, I'm going to give you a base open standard, right, for an alert that goes, this will integrate and talk to whatever platform you have. Here's an open alert standard. It'll sync into whatever you got. You might be going to have to customize it a little bit because, Microsoft does their alert this way. Sentinel one does their alert that way. You're gonna have to customize a little bit, get some of that information in, but now you can kind of get your alerts. Like, so it's like, hey, take a little bit of onus customer on this open standard, or wait for these guys to ever, actually come together, which they're never gonna do. Right.
Yeah, there's
But
an AI company in the making. See, now, if you created an AI company that took those, that didn't take the consortium or standards, I think you would have a product if you could pull it off.
yeah, I don't have the time or the patience anymore. So
Yeah,
there you
not
go.
me either. There's a business idea for somebody out there. Just
There you
tell them
go.
that we gave it to you.
All me and Jim asked for is 2% royalties for the rest of our lives. Like,
Yeah, perpetual. So I get a question for you because you've been asking them for me.
okay.
How long, you started this with Active Directory. How long do you think Active Directory continues to live in customers and environments?
Dude, at this point, I don't think it ever dies, because I can't, like, I can't see a viable replacement for it.
Well, so I'll look at it differently. It's the legacy technical debt that customers have no replacement for that only works with Active Directory. And I'm guessing you've got a good 5 to 10 years. And there are customers that want to do cloud first, right? It's a journey. Cloud first to get to cloud only. But let's take manufacturing. They've got stuff out there that runs PLCs that are still running Windows 2000 and Windows XP, but they have logins and everything else. They use Active Directory.
Yeah.
So I think the bigger problem is the technical debt and the things that they can't replace that's driving the dependency to keep Active Directory. Yeah, I could see customers in 20 years still having this conversation. It will diminish over time.
Yeah.
But it's just the customers, especially the large enterprises that are deeply entrenched in their homegrown applications, right? That does LDAP calls. That, yeah, well, you can kind of sort of do it in the cloud, but it's not a better solution. It's a kludge. So why would you? You still have to support the LDAP directory, so why not do something that you know and isolate it?
Even so now what I'm thinking is, so like even in your modern day, your modern day company, right? So you start a company today and you go Microsoft. Obviously, you're not going to do Active Directory. You'll get, Microsoft Online or whatever, but you're still going to get Azure Active.
You're going to get Intra, right? So you'd have
right.
a cloud identity.
Intra, yeah.
And as long as you've got SaaS applications that support SSO, OIDC, SAML, I've known of a couple companies that have done that. And I think that's great because you're reducing your attack surface, right? You're not eliminating it, you reduce it.
So, what happens is, okay, so let's say me and you just go really crazy. You and I start a modern manufacturing business tomorrow. Mm-hmm. We got a manufacturing plant. We got devices. They're robotic, right? So we have a robotic manufacturing plant, right? So we have devices that have to get firmware updates. We need to log on some kind of way on-prem. Like,
the other is autonomy. So a manufacturing plant, and at Delphi did manufacturing, and we had to design it so when you lost the internet, not if, when you lost the internet, you don't shut the plant down.
Right.
So you've got local authentication, and there's ugly ways to do that. But those are things, healthcare, right? You lose the internet or you've got to log in. So I think there's an on-premise footprint for certain verticals that is perpetuated, whether it's Active Directory or some replacement.
Yeah.
I just think it's there, for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. It has to be. And and as much as I think we have, I think we have like two generations now that have, you know, completely grown up like with the internet. And so I get that they think that
Mhm.
this is, you know, this is it. Like everything's the internet, everything's got to be connected. But like, you know, there are real industries where it's like, no, like they they have to exist
Yeah,
without connectivity,
yeah.
right?
Well, well, let's take Home Depot and Lowe's. Their requirement is that in the event of hurricanes, they have to stay open.
Mm,
So it's not just, they got to be able to run cash registers. They got to be able critical infrastructure. And as you look at those kind of sectors, you go, yeah, I mean, there's just need for some localized authentication in business.
man, interesting.
Oh yeah, that's a government requirement,
Yeah,
critical infrastructure that especially Florida, places that get hit the hardest,
right.
they have to be open so people can come in and get those supplies.
Yeah,
And there's been hurricanes where I heard rumor of like 2 or 3 months that they have to be able to run. So this isn't like 24 hours. This is months that you
yeah,
have to be able to survive and run your business because the local people depend on it.
man.
Interesting stuff.
It is interesting stuff. See, look at these people. All kind of challenges in identity. All right, Jim, we're gonna wrap, man. We can talk for hours, bud.
Till next time.
Till next time, man. Are you going to Gartner later this year?
No,
No?
I'm trying to avoid conferences. They're bad for my health.
All right, all right. Well, we'll find. I'll find some reason to travel somewhere, and we'll grab dinner.
Yeah, I'm all up for it, especially if you're buying. I'm easy, not cheap. I just want you to know. So, hey, great catching up with you, David.
You too, man. All right, that's it, folks. We will see you guys next time.